Women entered the workforce in the 1960s, and over the past 60 years, we've seen great strides in the way that women are influencing the modern business landscape. For more than 30 years, they've been earning more bachelor's degrees than men, asking for promotions and negotiating salaries at the same rates as men, and contrary to conventional wisdom, they're staying in the workforce at the same rate as men. Yet women are still having a hard time being heard or taken seriously in organizations in this country. I think most of us can agree that discrimination against women in the workplace is not as in your face as it was before, and it's often much harder to see. This happens in part because of the unconscious bias that both men and women hold, but often don't even realize it. Gender bias specifically is prominently visible within professional settings. One way that this bias leaks out into the workplace is through something called microaggressions. Microaggressions are the subtle, everyday, verbal, nonverbal, and environmental slights, comments, or actions, whether intentional or unintentional, which results in negative messages towards a non-dominant group. Now, of course, I'm not saying that this is applicable to all men, all women, or all workplaces, but I'd like to explore some ways in which women are continuing to feel less and less visible in the workplace, specifically what's contributing to this systemic issue and little things that can be done to combat it. One thing we see is that women are often interrupted or ignored in meetings, especially when there are only one or two women around the table. Their voices can easily go unheard. It's very common that others may interrupt them, finish their sentences, or not listen or talk over them in meetings. More frustrating is when a woman offers her idea and no one responds. Then, a few minutes later, a man in the room presents the same idea, and only then is it heard and received well. Women are assumed to be incompetent until they prove themselves otherwise. They often have their judgment questioned in their area of expertise and are asked to provide additional evidence of their competence. This means that women are held to higher standards than men and need to do more to prove themselves. Women get promoted on performance, and men get promoted on potential. Research shows that women must prove that they are capable of succeeding in a role before they're promoted into it, whereas men may be promoted on their perceived potential. That means that men often move up faster in organizations. We also see that women are sometimes assigned a role or task only because of their gender, like to decorate for an office party, to take notes in a meeting, or to get coffee. Women are also less likely to be given the opportunity to partake in stretch assignments or take on more difficult or technical projects that can pave a path for internal promotions. Being the only one is still a common experience for women. 1 in 5 women say that they are often the only woman or one of the only women in the room at work. The pressure of being the only one can be very overwhelming. In fact, studies show that individuals who are the onlys are subject to a higher percentage of bias and discrimination from members of the majority group, whether intentional or not. This leads to the onlys stepping back and trying to blend in with the crowd. So all of these things can lead you to feel like you don't matter or your contribution isn't valued, and eventually you begin to feel invisible in the organization. When women feel dismissed and undervalued in these ways, they feel like the organization is just saying, you matter less. It doesn't come from one person. It wasn't necessarily created or enforced with intention. So what's contributing to this systemic issue? Women are often socially and culturally expected to be nurturing and likable, which in turn restricts their consideration for a leadership position. On the other hand, if they're assertive and forthright, they're deemed to be unlikable and too bossy to be good leaders. Women tend to have a more cooperative and participatory style of leading, where men tend to have a more command and control style. Men are seen as more task-oriented and directive, while women are seen as more democratic. Assertiveness is an important quality of a leader, yet if women are assertive, it can be seen as aggressive. So this leaves women having to walk a thin line between being too nice and too forceful, and they're often judged as too emotional. For example, when men show anger, it looks like strength, but when women do the same, they are perceived as too emotional and out of control. If a woman is soft or cautious, she's reinforcing those stereotypes. Yet if she's assertive and confident, which are historically considered important characteristics for good managers, she may be perceived as bossy or feisty. It's really a lose-lose. Men tend to be good at branding themselves, meaning they let others know about their successes and strengths. Women are more likely to be modest or silent about their own accomplishments, to avoid sounding boastful or braggy. Men are also more impulsive than women, which results in a just do it attitude, where women are nurtured with the outlook of don't do it unless you know you can do it right. This can lead to women not going for job opportunities if they can't check each qualification, where men are more likely to apply regardless. Women are more likely to get lower initial offers. Recent studies show that hiring managers will offer a slightly lower salary because they think they can get away with it. And because women are often so grateful just to get the position, they're less likely to negotiate the offer, which contributes to the pay gap. While employers believe that men will put more effort into succeeding at work once they become fathers, they believe women will direct more effort towards their kids. This leads to men getting a fatherhood bonus and women getting a motherhood penalty. This can lead to something called the maternal wall, where much like the glass ceiling, it can limit a woman's upward trajectory in an organization because of pregnancies and maternity leaves. Women may also be discriminated against when they opt for part-time or flexible work schedules. Not wanting to separate mother and child, supervisors may rethink a new mom's responsibilities, eliminating travel or projects that require long hours. In contrast, men could be given additional responsibilities or opportunities to succeed because they now have a family to provide for. So we've heard that many of these examples are deeply rooted in modern organizations, or are a result of bias that may be unconscious to the people who are being oppressive. So how can you fight an enemy you can't see? And how do you enact change on a personal level to help influence a cultural shift? Women, let's have each other's backs. To combat microaggressions, participate in what's called micro-sponsorship. This is when you begin engaging in small acts of support and help along the way. This can mean acknowledging another woman's contribution to peers or supervisors. If you see that someone's being overlooked or talked over in a meeting, speak up and bring the focus and credit back to her. When you hear of big assignments, help promote female colleagues and remind others of her accomplishments in similar work. Or call out when you see others behaving in a non-inclusive way. By acknowledging and appreciating each other's results, women can highlight each other's skills and accomplishments and build reputations both internally and externally. When women endorse one another's ideas, they gain an extra measure of legitimacy in their colleagues' minds. So surround yourself with people who have your back, who will defer to you when you're an expert on a topic, and will help elevate your position at the table. Though it might feel uncomfortable at first, the potential payoff will be huge. When you run into an influential leader or a senior person at your organization, and they casually ask, "Hi, how are you?" the answer should never be, "Fine, good," or "Great." The answer should be something like, "I'm doing really well, I'm working on X," or "I'm super excited about X," or "I'm really pleased at the success we had with X." Use the opportunity to quickly communicate what you're achieving, working on, or have accomplished. When you're thanked for an achievement, never say, "It was nothing." Always thank the person acknowledging you. Say, "I worked really hard to make this happen." Listeners will respect your triumphs when they know you put in a lot of effort. If there are others who also deserve credit, acknowledge them after you express appreciation for the recognition you've received. Speak with authority. Make others recognize that you're an expert in the subject matter. Too many of us don't spend enough time considering the art in which we say things. To embody an authoritative presence, speak with vocal conviction at a high volume. Further help yourself by organizing what you want to say well in advance of a discussion. It's no secret that a lack of mentors and advisors can stunt professional growth. After all, in the business world, it's not always what you know, but who you know. Consider becoming involved with networking groups, professional associations, and other organizations that feature and promote successful women leaders. This will give you the opportunity not only to learn from the experiences of seasoned professionals, but also enables you to make and build connections with potential mentors who can offer support and advice later in your career. Make senior leaders and managers champions of diversity. Talk about gender bias and call out microaggressions when you see them. Work with your managers on succession planning. They know the key roles that lead to the top. As they look for successors for these jobs, encourage that they deliberately include women and promote their leadership abilities. Over 46% of the current workforce in the US are women. And while we've come a long way in the last 60 years, we're still continuing to hear that women are feeling dismissed, undervalued, and like they matter less and less in organizations. My hope is with the information I've laid out in this video, you are better able to understand what contributes to this perception, how organizations may be perpetuating gender bias, and how individuals can do their part to help fight back from becoming the invisible woman.